Mm, alrighty. We are now live on the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid. And once again, we have Bart Sibrel back in the house with us. So before he says anything, we got to give him a round of applause. Bart, how's everything going with you?
Well, good. I appreciate that. That's a better laugh track than Gilligan's Island has. I appreciate that.
Bart, I
You're high
had to have
tech.
you on. You know, I had to hit you up. Hey, I'm trying. I'm trying. Every time I try, they kick me back down a notch or two. But but
Mm.
Bart, I wanted to have you back on, and I reached out to you because of this Artemis mission that they continue to talk about, which just quote unquote splashed down back in Earth waters a day or so ago. What do you have to say about that? If they said that they left Earth and traveled around the moon multiple times before returning back to Earth.
Well, they claim they only orbited the moon one time because they didn't have enough fuel to actually do an orbit. So they had more fuel than Apollo did, and then they did less than Apollo did, which is kind of interesting. They to launch a rocket, you don't make that thing 1 inch taller or 1 ounce heavier than it absolutely has to be. So if they left Earth orbit, I think they had something like 15% more fuel than Apollo did. And all they did is allegedly use inertia to do a figure eight around the moon and come back. If you want to put up picture one, or I can share it on my end, try it on your end first if you can go full screen with picture one. If not, I'll try it on my end.
Oh,
And, you know,
let's
I postponed saying they faked the moon landing as long as possible. The fact is, they did fake it, and we'll get into that as to why. Uh, this picture that we're about to show, proves logically that they did not go to the moon in 1969. And, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I assumed maybe they are going to try to leave Earth orbit. We have another clip of multiple takes of astronauts saying this will be the first time humans leave Earth orbit. And it looks like they didn't.
You want to try
They have.
again, Bart? I'm having problems. I'm sorry, I'm having problems on my end for a second. You may want to try
Sure,
to
let
come
me
up
just
on your
share my
end while
screen.
I'm searching
I'm going to
for it.
try
I'm
sharing
sorry.
on my end. I think I know how to do it here. This is
Okay.
screen two. So you should be, oh, here it is. So you should be seeing my screen, my logo. Is that right or no? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
You do. All righty. So here's the picture everyone can take a look at here. In 1903, top left picture, this is first flight, which took multiple attempts to get off the ground. Okay. Multiple attempts. It's a kite airplane. And in 1903, it flew 37 yards at a top speed of 7 miles per hour. To the right of it, 49 years later, jets are flying at 2,000 miles per hour. 2,000 miles total distance instead of 37 yards, and at 500 miles per hour. Little side note, the 747 took 168 attempts to get off the ground with 10 years better technology than the moon rocket. And the moon rocket worked on its first attempt when it's the most complicated machine ever built. And no aviation machine has ever worked on the first attempt. So, top left, we have a kite airplane. And with 49 years, more technological advancements, we go to jets. Okay. We went from 37 yards to 2,000 miles. We went from 7 miles per hour to 500 miles per hour. So let's take a look at the bottom left. We have astronauts allegedly driving cars on the moon. To tell you the truth, the smartest AI in the world, it's not available to the public, but it said that exact photo is fake. It said it has that mountain is a fake backdrop, and that is not even a real person. That's in miniature. It said that that moon rover is about 1.5 foot in size, and that's a little astronaut doll. But in any case, in 1971, they're supposedly driving cars, playing golf on the moon. And now, 55 years later, assuming Artemis is telling the truth, they can only look out the window at the moon. You see here, so if you can go from a kite airplane to a jet in 49 years, if they could go to the moon on the first attempt with 1/millionth the computing power of a cell phone in the 60s, why is it that 55 years later, we can only look out the window at the moon as we go by? You see that? So that means technology has gone backwards for the first time in the history of the world, which is impossible, which means they falsified the moon landing of 1969. The smartest AI in the world just said so. Go to my website, Sibrel.com, Sibrel.com, and you'll see the AI article, including a video of the results of the smartest AI in the world, which comparing pictures to an unmanned Chinese probe on the moon's surface, it says they were genuine pictures of the surface of the moon. But every Apollo picture from the Nixon administration, it said, was fake. While I'm sharing my screen, I thought I'd go ahead and bring this up. We probably showed this last time, but on the left is a picture as it would look in sunlight. Go outside, look at 2 trees, 2 telephone poles, 2 people standing in your front yard or parking lot at work at lunchtime. Shadows from the sun are always parallel. It's huge. The sun is 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth, 93 million miles away. It's going to cast shadows in the same direction on Earth or the moon. On the right is a picture they claim was taken on the moon, and yet 2 objects, an astronaut and a rock, 5 feet apart, their shadows are intersecting at 90 degrees, indicating it's a very close electrical light, which means they're on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. You see, so we can prove in these 2 pictures, really one, this one picture proves they didn't go to the moon because the picture on the right cannot be duplicated in sunlight, which means it's electrical light, which means they didn't go to the moon. And then we have the logic here. You can't go from driving cars on the moon 55 years ago to where you can only look out the window at the moon. It's the best you can do with 6 decades better technology. You see? So that's completely illogical. Let me see if I have any other still pictures, but that's pretty much it. The rest are video clips. I'll stop sharing now. And if you want to show some video clips, we can.
Okay, we can show some video clips. I wanted to ask you this, Bart. Since there were no satellites except for the Sputnik satellite, how did they get the pictures back from the moon, and how was Nixon able to talk to the astronauts on a rotary desk phone, and how did they manage to get a rover on the moon to drive around in the small rocket ship? I'm just trying to figure it out for myself.
Yeah, this is why they destroyed all the technology. NASA admits it's one of the clips we have, clip number 9, if you want to play it, or you could insert it at this point in post-production. But we have a NASA astronaut saying they destroyed all of the Apollo technology. They destroyed all the equipment, all the schematics, all the blueprints, all the electrical diagrams, and all the original telemetry data where the rocket really was, and all the original videotapes of mankind's greatest accomplishment. Now, if you were ever going to destroy technology, you might consider destroying the atomic bomb. Okay, you used it to end the war, but let's not let that genie out of the bottle ever again. It's too dangerous. Let's destroy that technology. No, but just 10 years later, atomic bombs are 1,000 times more powerful in 10 years of development. So if they could go to the moon on the first attempt with 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, we would have been on Mars. 10 years later, we'd be in another solar system by now. There'd be bases all over the moon. And so if you spent an equivalent of $250 billion to put a man on the moon, you would never destroy that equipment. There's a plane my father flew for 15 years in the Air Force called the B-52. It is now almost 70 years old, and there are still about, I think, 75 or so of them in service. They use them all the time in war. Nothing works better. They haven't done anything. So if they had this moon landing technology that worked, they would never destroy it, especially if it costs $250 billion. That has never happened in the history of the world. Okay. It's never happened in the history of the world that an aviation endeavor worked on the first attempt. It's never happened in the history of the world where a breakthrough, like breaking the sound barrier, flying across the Atlantic, splitting the atom, that no nation could do it 50 years later. And now they can only do 1/5 of what Apollo did. And it's never happened in the history of the world that they invented a technology and then intentionally destroyed it. You would never do that if you really went to the moon, but that's exactly what you would do if you perpetrated a fraud. Because Rashid, exactly what you said, how could they carry a moon car on the side of the lunar module without affecting the balance as that rocket is trying to land vertically? And then how could it land vertically? Because get this, 5 decades later, with 5 decades better technology and 10 million times more computing power, the first time Elon Musk tried to land a rocket vertically, it blew up. The second time, it blew up. The third time, it blew up. The fourth time, it blew up. It took 5 attempts with 5 decades more technology and 10 million times more computing power to land a rocket vertically that somehow landed 6 times in a row on the moon. And that's why they destroyed the technology, because you could prove it couldn't do it. You see? We have all this proof they didn't go. The common man, I hate to call you common like myself, but you see they didn't go to the moon. I see, reluctantly, belatedly, sadly, they did fake the moon landing. And yet, for some reason, these smart people, these scientists, don't see it because they've made a god out of it. If you don't believe in God, you're God of science, and the Messiah of science is putting a man on the moon. The problem is the other Messiah of science, the AI, just said the moon pictures are fake. So we have a problem there. The people literally worship the moon landing. I save hate mail, and I get a lot of it. I wish you were dead. You're a piece of garbage, or words worse than that. One email said, they wish they could watch me and my family burn alive before their eyes. All I'm saying is that I think the federal government that killed their own president and faked the beginning of wars faked a TV image. No, but why would they react to that degree unless their minds are clouded with emotion, which proves that I'm correct, because you can't see when your minds are clouded with emotion or pride. Pride, according to the Bible, says it hinders your perception of the truth. And pride comes before a fall. You know, my film, go to Sibrel.com. It opens up with the Tower of
Yep.
Babel, to reach to
Yep.
the heavens.
Yep.
Jesus said to start a tower and to not finish it, you're saying you're a fool to the world. In Nashville, Tennessee, on the main street going downtown, there was a big hole in the ground about 15 stories down for parking. And the picture of a high rise that was going to be there, and the hole sat there for 15 years, going on 20. Somebody started a job they couldn't finish, and there was a picture of this great high rise that was never there. And then we show the Titanic, that they had the audacity to put in a poster the ship that God himself could not sink. And we know what happened there. And then Nixon, on that phone you were talking about, which, by the way they did it, they had a really long extension cord. And he said, putting a man on the moon, he said it was second in greatness to God making the universe. Second in greatness to God making the universe, when he knew it was a lie. So I believe God's going to rebuke the United States of America and mankind by exposing the moon landing fraud. And if someone in the government federal government of the United States doesn't get right with God by telling the truth soon, economic collapse, earthquakes, meteors are going to rebuke us and humble us because, this has gone on too long. And then we have murders that were committed because of this. It's not my opinion. I interviewed the widow of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, interviewed her for 4 hours, who said her husband was a whistleblower in the Apollo program, was under Secret Service protection the day he was murdered by the CIA for not cooperating with fraud in the Apollo program. And then we have an eyewitness who saw them film the moon landing in an airplane hangar on a fake lunar set at Cannon Air Force Base, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. That's pretty specific. He even admitted that he killed somebody to cover it up as he's dying and confessing his sin to be right with God. All of this is in my book at Sibrel.com, which is interactive with 17 video links, which you can see for free at the website. And I went from being the biggest fan to having to say they actually did fake it. And how sad is that? Mankind's greatest accomplishment by the most powerful nation on earth is a complete fraud. And our Declaration of Independence, which says we have the right to alter or abolish a government that is destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, they're murdering their own people to cover up their moon landing fraud, not to mention JFK, not to mention the Gulf of Tonkin, not to mention other people, right? So why isn't anything being done about this? I have no idea. Back to you. Sorry for the rant.
Oh, I love it. But didn't Elon Musk say, and this is the richest, so-called richest man in the world, close to being a trillionaire? Did he say that it would take at least 8 rocket ships full of fuel to make it to to fuel up enough to go to the moon?
Yeah, he first said 8, and then he had to revise that to 15, and now they're saying 30. That it's going to take 30 fuel trips of fuel to a way station to have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit, go to the moon, do an orbit. You see, assuming Artemis looped around the moon, which it looks like maybe they didn't, but let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. They had to have more fuel than Apollo did. We have footage we uncovered of the crew of Apollo 11 faking being halfway to the moon from Earth orbit, meaning the Apollo equipment never left Earth orbit. It couldn't leave Earth orbit. They had on Artemis a little bit more fuel, which maybe could have sent them on a coast looping around the moon and coming back, but not enough to do an orbit. That would take more fuel. And then you would need more fuel to land, and then you would need more fuel to come back up, and then you would need more fuel to leave Earth orbit, moon orbit, and then you would need more fuel to go from the moon back to the Earth. They're now saying that would take 30 times more fuel than the Apollo rocket to do. So how did the Apollo rocket do it? And Von Braun, we have multiple clips of Von Braun saying it, and he put it in writing. He says it's impossible to go to the moon in one rocket. It would take a minimum of 3, and each one would weigh 800,000 tons, and the Saturn V was only 2,500 tons. A tiny difference of 32,000%. And he says these numbers are mathematically irrefutable. So I don't know what to say. They set a goal, they couldn't achieve it, and instead of eating humble pie, they pridefully falsified it. And because they got stuck in that hole, they murdered people to cover it up. They're murdering people to this day because to verify the eyewitness at Cannon Air Force Base, I interviewed his son. The CIA came to his house and threatened to kill him and his family about 3 years ago, just for talking to me about his father's participation in the moon landing fraud at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968. This is a big deal. The AI almost brought this down when the AI said the moon pictures were fake. They buried the story. It's never on the evening news, never made a major newspaper. And if you go to the original link, it says don't click because your data will be stolen and you'll be associated with child pornography. That's how desperate they are to keep the fact that the AI just said the moon pictures were fake. Because if scientists start realizing it was fake, then the whole thing is going to come undone. And then what will happen? The footage I uncovered of them faking being halfway to the moon right in front of your eyes, that's what convinced me. It convinced two NBC news directors. They had a disagreement. One of them said, yes, it proves they didn't go to the moon, but if we broadcast this, it will cause a civil war. He refused to have anything to do with it. The other one says we're going to broadcast it nationwide. They flew me to New York, put me up in a fancy hotel, paid me thousands of dollars for the exclusive license of the footage that proves they never left Earth orbit. And after all that was done, ready to broadcast, they got a phone call from the federal government threatening to pull their license if they broadcast it. And they backed down. So the government is really afraid. You know, everyone talks about reforming the government, and whatever. The number one tool is to show them that the moon landing was fake, that they were taken for suckers 6 times and murdered their neighbors to cover it up. That would cause more reform than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I was looking right before the show. I was looking up something, and I put this in the search engine, the Google search engine. How thick would a lead shield need to be to get through the radiation belt? And it said that to pass through the Van Allen radiation belts twice, such as a round trip to the moon, using only lead for shielding, the required thickness is generally considered to be in the range of several inches to over a foot, depending on the target dose. It says to reduce typical gamma rays and all of this. So, and then I googled, does the Artemis have a lead shielding? And it says no, Artemis does not have a lead shielding. It has something called Avocot, and that is for re-entry. And so when I looked at, as a matter of fact, let me Google it, and it says, does Artemis spaceship have lead shield? And then the AI overview says the Artemis Orion spacecraft heat shield does not use lead. It utilizes ablative material called Avcoat in a honeycomb structure designed to erode and burn away to protect the capsule from temperatures reaching half as hot as the sun. This specialized material absorbs and sheds extreme heat during re-entry. So this is made for the re-entry into the atmosphere of the Earth, but it has no shielding from the Van Allen radiation belt. So before you comment, I also did research. Like I said, I looked at it in the search engine. Is lead or Avcoat better to go through the radiation belt above the Earth? And the response was this: for traversing the Van Allen radiation belts above the Earth, neither lead nor Avcoat is the ideal primary shielding material, though for entirely different reasons. In fact, using lead to shield against the charged particles, protons, and electrons found in the Van Allen belt is generally counterproductive. Here is the breakdown of why, based on radiation physics, why lead is bad for radiation belts. Secondary radiation, it says high density materials like lead are excellent for stopping X-rays, but when high energy electrons found in the outer Van Allen belt hit lead, they produce a secondary highly penetrating X-ray radiation known as brimstone. This actually increases the radiation dose to the crew rather than decreasing it. Weight: lead is extremely heavy, making it impractical for space flight, where every kilogram matters. Then it says, why Avcot? Avcot is not the solution. Purpose: Avcot is an ablative heat shield material designed to burn away and dissipate heat during atmospheric re-entry. It is meant to handle extreme heat, thousands of degrees, not stop nuclear radiation. Radiation properties: while low density plastics are generally better than heavy metals for this purpose, Avcoat is not specifically optimized for radiation shielding during a belt traverse. So I'm saying, they said the Artemis has no lead shielding, and it only has AFCO, which is used for re-entry into the atmosphere. And the definition says that neither one is sufficient to go through the radiation belt. So how could they go through the radiation belt twice without any adverse effects on your DNA or any adverse effects on your health?
Yeah, this is why it's beginning to look like they did not leave Earth orbit. There's video footage that's about an hour long, I'm told, of them in the cabin doing various things. Nonstop video footage, like us talking for an hour. Why wouldn't they take that camera and go past the crew, go to the window, and show the moon, going by real slow? There's not a single shot of that one time in the entire mission. That would be the shot to prove you were in, close to the moon, going by the moon. The only pictures we have are still pictures. And it seems odd. That seems odd to me that there would be no live motion images of going past the crew to the window with the moon really close outside. Not a single one. They claim they had aluminum shielding for the radiation, which is not enough. And then get this, they claimed that their cargo, including their clothing and food, they would put that around the spacecraft as additional shielding as well. I know when I get a dental x-ray, which lasts 1/24th of a second, right? That's the radiation dose, lasts 1/24th of a second. And they give the me and the doctor, I think it's 1/8 of an inch of lead. So you can imagine being in radiation for about 2 hours. If you go to Sibrel.com, I could read it right now from the homepage. I might as well just read it. Now we're on the radiation subject. This is a quote from von Braun himself. Let me just scroll down. He says, our measurements show that the maximum radiation level, this is when they set Geiger counters into the radiation belts in 1958. He says it's equivalent between 10 and 100 rotogens per hour, which is an average of 50, depending on the still undetermined proportions of protons to electrons. Since a human being exposed for 2 days, right, to even 10 rotogens, right, would only have a 50% chance of survival. The radiation belts present an obstacle to spaceflight, meaning going to the moon. So 10 to 100 rotogens per hour averages to 50 per hour. At the claimed speed of the Apollo craft, this would be 2 hours in the radiation to the moon and 2 hours in the radiation back from the moon. That's what they said the Artemis did, or 200 rotogens. Since 10 rotogens over 2 days will kill you, which is 0.2 rotogens per hour, right? The radiation belts are 250 times the lethal dose. So that's what Van Allen said. You'd have to scroll down. We could read it. It's down about halfway down there, but that's what he said, and he's the guy who the radiation belts were named after. In fact, he was one of the people on the list at Cannon Air Force Base. Keep going down. Keep going down. That's my latest article about Artemis. Keep going down further. That's the AI story. And right after that is the radiation belt story. Okay, so that's what I read right there. Right. Our measurements of 1958 are 10 to 100 per hour. Okay, so if you get 10, it's the amount of radiation and then the duration that you receive it. Like you could get 10 rotogens over a lifetime, you'd probably be okay. Do you understand? So it's the amount of radiation plus the time that you're exposed to it that is the formula for whether it's lethal or not. And so at 10 to 100 per hour, 50 per hour average. If you're in it for 2 hours, right, that's 100. And he says that 10 over 2 days would kill you half the time, right? So that means it's actually 250 times a lethal dose on average, the radiation belts. So this is apparently why we didn't see any real images of video of them in the spacecraft going up to the window and showing you. I mean, wouldn't you do that? That's what I would do. If I were an astronaut and the moon was out the window going by, I would say, bring the camera up past